Hello, and welcome to another episode of Adamo Baseball, where I'm your host, Adamo. And in this episode, I'm going to be breaking down the Houston Astros. So, yeah, there's still some controversy over them. I think they're one of the teams that the delayed 2020 probably helped the most. Because a lot of people really aren't thinking about the whole sign stealing scandal for them anymore. I mean, it's going to be on some people's minds, and it's going to be on some people's minds forever, and there's nothing you can do about that. But I think that they're still probably going to feel some of that, if for no other reason than, it's always going to be with you, because that ring that they got in 2017, it's always going to feel tainted. And in a lot of fans' eyes, it always will. Frankly, I'm ready to move on. I want to see how they do after the scandal. I want to see how, like a lot of their best players who had a bad 2020, how they can bounce back to see if it really was a hangover from the scandal, or if they couldn't win without stealing signs, or if it was just a bad year. That's possible. So, moving on from that, I want to start off by saying I think they're going to finish third in the division. I think 85 wins is realistic. I don't think that they're going to be going to the playoffs. I don't. As I mentioned, the AL West is winnable, and they certainly have the talent to do it up and down the board. They've got the talent. There's no denying that. Though I don't necessarily think that they will, because, I don't know, some of their best players had a really bad year last year. And I know I really keep stressing the fact that 2020 was an outlier for a lot of situations, but they did go to the ALCS last year, and they were one win away from being the second team in history to come back from a 3-0 deficit to win a series in baseball. They were a Game 7 away from the World Series with a possible 2017 rematch. Now, a lot of fans would see that as a farce. Houston had a losing record last year. They got the 6th seed, going 29-31 during their 60-game stretch. They did not have COVID. There was no outbreak in their team at all. There was nothing. There really was nothing outstanding in that regard. They just played poorly until they got to the playoffs, and a lot of those old memories came back, so they were able to go above and beyond, if you will, and overachieve a bit. Tampa still won that Game 7, and the rest is history. I think that because some normalcy will return to the season, I'd say probably around July time frame, we're actually going to start seeing stands filled. I don't know what the standard is right now. It is fully possible that there will be there could be fans in the stands in certain stadiums. As of recording this video, it is March 4th. When I release this episode, it will be March 12th. I know a couple things are going to happen between now and then. So, first of all, I don't want to get political. I'm just going to say what's going on. Governor Abbott of Texas has relieved the mask mandate within the state. If you're wondering why I'm not wearing a mask, I live alone, so I don't have to worry about protecting myself or anyone else in my own place. In the state of Texas, they've lifted the mask mandate as of right now, and we don't know what cases are going to do. So it could work out. It may not work out. That's all I'm going to say on that subject. How that affects this, so that it's not just a tangent, it will affect when Houston decides to put fans in the stands. Because if the mask mandate is up, and they did say that business can operate at 100%, well, now the Houston Astros still have to follow Major League Baseball protocol. You might be asking why I didn't cover this with the Rangers. Well, it wasn't like that with the Rangers whenever I recorded that episode. Well, with Houston it is. That's why I'm covering it now. They still have to follow Major League Baseball protocols all the way across the board. There's no exceptions. However, if Major League Baseball does grant them concessions, they could fill they could fill the stands. In theory, they could. Realistically, if they choose to, it'd be more like 10,000 fans max. That way they're not putting anyone in harm's way. You know, you got mom, dad, a couple of 9-year-olds coming with you to the game, you know, or 9-year-old and an 8-year-old, or 10 and 6, whatever. You got family coming together, they can be together in the crowd. You don't have to worry about spacing them out. You got a family of 12 and a single guy going to the stadium. You're not going to want them within 6 feet of each other. So, realistically, with the size of the stadiums, I know Houston Stadium is relatively large. I think Minute Maid Park, yeah, it's a pretty large stadium. So they can put 10,000 fans in there and not worry about the 6-foot protocol. So opening day, they may have fans. And it may bring back some of those old memories, and it may allow them to play better. Part of why 2020 was an outlier is because fans weren't allowed in the stands. And that was fully justified. I will never argue against that. That was fully justified. Probably around July timeframe is when we'll actually start to see fans in the stands, assuming that the vaccine rollout goes as planned right now. I'm not going to factor in tangents. This is not that kind of episode. However, I wanted to elaborate on that for the sake of this team. That way I can cover them all aspects. And the other aspect, so one of the pitchers that I've got in the rotation, whenever I made this list, it hadn't happened yet, but in his spring training debut, he fractured one of his fingers, and it's believed that he's going to have surgery. The extent of that injury is unknown because they're still speculating on surgery, and you really can't determine that. That's the other thing. So, now it's been 8.5 minutes talking about this. Let's get into the lineup. Leading off, you love him or you hate him, depending on how you view the Astros right now. Jose Altuve, second base. So before 2020, he was probably the best second baseman in baseball. 2017 MVP, bats over 300 every single year, knocks in 20-plus home runs. I didn't even bother to look up his stats. I don't have to. I know the quality of the player whenever he's actually playing. I don't know if he needed the sign stealing or not. I don't care. I'm already past that point. What I do care about is the fact that if he has a bounce back year, it means that he actually played right. And that's good enough for me. And if he doesn't, then he doesn't. But when he's on top of his game, there's more to playing than hitting. Because sign stealing, you're not going to know if it's going to be a ground ball hit far to your left where you got to dive for it. And he is that kind of player. He actually does cover second base exactly as you want a second baseman to cover. So, yeah. He actually is a qualified second baseman. And probably one of the best second basemen in the game. We'll find out with hitting. And frankly, I got no reason to believe that he can't hit. He can hit. Batting second, Alex Bregman, third base. He was one of the core that got them that ring in 2017. And yeah, he plays third base as well as Jose plays second base. Maybe not the same level, but he's still pretty good, and he's exactly where he needs to be in the lineup. Batting third, Michael Brantley, left field. Another one of those guys that took him to the World Series. And he was one of the guys that almost got him to the World Series last year. Batting cleanup, Carlos Correa, shortstop. Pretty much the same thing as Jose Altuve. You can debate that he's the best shortstop in baseball. I'm not going to say that he is, okay? With that contract that Tatis signed not that long ago, I don't know. Carlos Correa, he deserves the money he's getting paid. And he's another one of those guys that 2020 was an outlier year for him too. Because he didn't play particularly well until the postseason. And when it mattered, he stepped up to the plate. Pun intended. Batting fifth, Kyle Tucker, right field. Okay, I actually had to look him up. He's not a bad player. He hasn't been playing nearly as long, so he was not part of that team. I think you know which one I'm talking about at this point. Not really proven asset, I suppose. Mostly just they need someone to fill that 5-hole. And right fielders don't typically put it out of the park 30-plus times, but good. Batting sixth, Yordan Alvarez, designated hitter. He hasn't been playing nearly as long as I thought. I thought that he'd been around in Houston for a while. No. His first year is 2019. And he's actually gotten rolling pretty well. Batting seventh, Yuli Gurriel, first base. Okay, he's another one of those guys that took the Astros to the World Series. And batting seventh, it's about what you would expect from a guy batting seventh. Batting eighth, Martin Maldonado, catcher. He's definitely paid for what he's done behind the plate, because he actually is a very good fielding catcher, and he knows how to handle a pitching staff. The dude caught for Justin Verlander and Dallas Keuchel and Garrett Cole and Zack Greinke. The dude has built a reputation for knowing how to catch. Batting ninth, Miles Straw, center field. He's not batting ninth because he's not a good hitter. He's batting ninth because he's raw. He doesn't have a lot of experience in the bigs. So, really, he may end up moving up in the lineup. He's one of those guys that starts off ninth in the lineup. Don't be shocked if he moves up. So, the lineup, most of it, you can expect some runs. You can expect some offense out of this team. Considering the last several years, they've put everything together that they need to make a winner. The rotation, this is where it gets tricky. So the top of the rotation, Zack Greinke. There's nothing wrong with that, except he's entering his age 37 season. He's been pitching since 2004, and while we naturally think of him as a superstar pitcher, he's had some down years. And 2019, when they traded for him, he was the 3 guy in the rotation when in a lot of rotations, he's been the number one. He won the Cy Young in 2009. Justifiably, too. He was 16-8 with like a 2.19 ERA in a season where if he was pitching for anyone other than Kansas City that year, he'd had 25 wins. And for the most part, he has pitched pretty well, except in the postseason. He does not pitch well in the playoffs because he's got the experience. He was a Dodger for a while. Like a lot of those division winners, he was the number 2 guy, sometimes number 3, but mostly the number 2, upper end number 2. If it wasn't for Kershaw, he'd have been number 1. He pitched pretty well in Arizona. He was the number 1 guy there. He comes to Houston. Immediately he's number 3, but has climbed his way up to the number 1. So with Greinke, I think he starts his decline. It could be this year. I don't hope for it, but I kind of expect it because I know everyone talks about Tom Brady being 43 and winning a Super Bowl. Baseball, when you're a starting pitcher, usually around age 37, you think about retirement. You don't think about continuing to play. I think this is when he starts to hit his decline. I don't think they're going to move him to the bullpen, but I think this is when he starts to drop off a bit. Pitching second in the rotation, Lance McCullers Jr. He was on that World Series team, and he actually pitches pretty well. He actually is a pretty good pitcher. And he's a solid number 2. Like, he's actually where he should be in the rotation. He's a solid number 2. There's really no reason to think otherwise. Number 3, this is the caveat one that I was talking about earlier. Framber Valdez. I don't know if I said his name right. If I said it wrong, I'm sorry. First start of spring training, fractures his finger. When I compiled this list, that hadn't happened yet. And frankly, there's not really much you can do about it. You hope for the best. You look at what he's done so far. He actually, if it weren't for the 2 guys ahead of him, he would be a solid number 2. But things happen. Sometimes there's just nothing you can do about it. So he may pitch this season. He may not. We'll just have to wait and see. 4th in the rotation, Jose Urquity. I think that's how you say his last name. It's been a while since I've seen him pitch, so I couldn't tell you. He would normally be a 3 guy in the rotation, and with the Valdez injury, Urquity probably will be moved up to the 3 guy in the rotation. I don't know who they're going to put at 5 now. I don't know how they're going to bounce that around. That's why I'm going to continue using this format. But he actually could be a number 3. And last in the rotation, Christian Javier. He's raw. And what we've seen thus far, he's not bad. He certainly can hold his own. But again, he's raw. That's why he's 5th in the rotation. It has nothing to do with quality. It's entirely because he's raw. So we'll just have to wait and see with him, too. Their rotation, when they're all pitching to their fullest potential, you're looking at a pretty scary rotation. It's not 3 superstars like it was 2 years ago, but yeah, this is a pretty good rotation. If they start to drop off, which is also fully possible, then high risk, high reward. Okay, so their bullpen is surprisingly good, actually. Their closer, Ryan Presley, He's only got 5 saves in his career, and he's got a pretty lengthy career. His ERA is around 3, which is about what you would expect for a reliever. Because most of his career, he's been a reliever. He hasn't been a closer. I can't remember what year it was, but I think it was like 2015. He led the league with pitching in 77 games. Closers don't do that. You can't risk hurting them. I mean, you hope to get 40 saves out of a closer at like absolute all-star level, but you don't have him pitching 70 times a game. Sorry, a season. 70 times a game. 70 times a season. So they're actually pretty set up there. He's got a long career, and he's done pretty well throughout his career. So, yeah, he actually is a pretty good closer. Then there are 2 bullpen guys that I picked. Pedro Baez and Enoli Paredes. I don't know. When I looked them up, they're pretty good. Baez, it turns out, was actually a pretty good reliever in the Dodgers bullpen for quite a while. I didn't know the Dodgers had a good bullpen guy. The last few years, that's been the one thing everyone's been complaining about with them. It turns out he was actually pretty good. And then Enoli, I'm not going to try his last name again. Apparently he's pretty good too. So, yeah, their bullpen could actually hover around about a 3 ERA, which is really what you want. Now, will their bullpen do that? I don't know. Is it fully possible for their bullpen to do that? Absolutely. So, yeah. But the Houston Astros, if they play to their full potential, they could be another 100-win team. Do I think that they're going to be a 100-win team? No. If they're all playing like at their downside, they're playing at their floor as opposed to playing at their ceiling, could they have a losing record? Sure. I don't think they'll have a losing record either. I think, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, realistically, I think 85 wins. They may make a push, and they may make some trades at the deadline to try to beef up their team a bit. But I don't think that they're going to make the playoffs. And I picked the Angels to win the division. I think the Angels win it with probably 94. And I picked the A's to finish second and just miss the playoffs. They're probably closer to about an 88-win team. So 85, realistically, that's a good playoff push, but it's also not wishful thinking. At very least, those are my thoughts on Houston. I wanted to get all the drama out of the way first because of what's been sitting with the team for a while. There's no denying it. But also, I want to give my honest opinion. And if you'd like to give me your honest opinion, you can do so in the comments below. Or if you're listening to my podcast, you can do so on Patreon at Adamo Baseball Podcast. Or if the platform that you're listening to lets you do so, I have got stuff on Anchor before. So I might actually be able to see it. If I can see it, I will absolutely read it. But, hey, let me know. And with that being said, thank you for listening. Cheers until next time.